Welcome to Behind the Cusp, a podcast diving deep into the layers of self-growth, inner work, and transformation. I'm your host, Marissa Mead, and after 15 years as a digital creator, I'm sharing my raw, unfiltered journey of healing and self-discovery to walk alongside you in yours. Together, we'll dive deep into the conversations that matter most, uncovering what it means to truly evolve from the inside out. This is where you elevate into transformation. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to Behind the Cusp. I think I needed that exhale. This past couple weeks has been a week. I was fighting this sickness on and off, and it really took me out. I think my body needed a good reset and rest. There was 2 straight days where I didn't even leave my couch, and I have not been sick in a while. So sometimes those things come up and you just have to listen to your body, and that's definitely something that I am prioritizing and have been for the last several years. But I want to dive right into this week's episode. This is going to be a very you-centered episode, built entirely from the DMs that I received following a story I put up this week. But for some context, this episode has been brewing with me for a while now. And I think I hit the right point of when I wanted to dive in and share it. And honestly, some different situations in my own life have prompted me to really think about opening this up like on the mic as something for us to talk about. And when I posted that Instagram story, if you saw it, maybe you were even someone who replied to it, I realized every woman is feeling this way. And why are we feeling this way? I also realized I'm not alone in the way that I feel. And all of those things feel really validating. And so this week we're going to dive into friendships. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about this episode and kind of writing out my notes and thoughts as I always do. But when I got so many DMs sharing so many of your thoughts, I was like, I have to incorporate this into the episode. This has to be a pillar of the episode. And so a lot of this episode is built around the DMs that I got. And the story is actually still up as I'm recording this. So they're still coming in. So this is just some of the ones that I've gotten since I put it up. If you missed the story, this is what I said. I said, I want to hear from you girls. What's something that you struggle with in adult friendships? Is it connecting, time, vulnerability, emotional availability, digital versus in person, so many other potential things? I've been thinking a lot about this as I look at my own friendships, and I wanted to open this conversation up. A few of the responses that I received were things like, I'm exhausted hitting a wall every 2 seconds in friendships. I'm tired of being the one to reach out all the time. If it's not gossip, it's not fun, and I'm not into gossip. Like, that's the energy of friendships lately. I don't feel like I've ever had a friend that I can count on no matter what. These are just a few of the hundreds of messages that came in and are still coming in when I asked this question on Instagram. When I read through the answers, there was a common thread in all of them. Loneliness, disconnection, time, and underlying all of that, it was this energy of why is this so hard? This episode is really prompted by things that I've navigated in friendship in my own life over the last several years, even leading up to the last week. And something that I've personally been really hyper focused on in the last few years as a whole is my friendships, the quality of them, how they feel, how I leave a interaction with a friend feeling, etc. I value quality over the quantity of friends. And I think many of you can probably sit there and say, yes, I do too. But what happens when the quality isn't there in friendship or any friendship? So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to sit with what you guys said about what's actually happening in our friendships. And my audience ranges in ages from mid-20s to tons of 30s and 40s and even 50s and 60s women. And so this is what's happening in our friendships no matter what the age is. And I think that's a really interesting thing to point out. I do think the prevalent messages that I received were from women in their 30s and 40s. But I think that this is widespread in friendships. So if you have felt like your friendships have changed, faded, shifted, or become harder to navigate, I want you to know that you're not alone through this episode. And this episode is not about blaming other people. It's not about blaming our friends. It's about understanding what's actually happening right now in our lives and how that affects our friendships. I also just want to say that if you need to pause this episode and come back to it at a different time and you can be fully present, then do that. This one might hit you in a soft spot. Honestly, maybe I'll even shed a tear or two, which happens in quite a few episodes. If you've been listening for any amount of time, you know. And I also want to challenge you to listen to this episode with a really open mind. Evaluate how you are showing up in friendships and what you can do to be a better friend. These are so many different sentiments that women have shared, and while you may relate to them on a level of how you feel your friends are acting or appearing towards you, let's also look in the mirror and look at ourselves at the same time. Because if this is happening in so many friendships across women, then chances are we've shown up this way in our friendships too. So let's not play the victim. Let's not point the finger. Let's listen to relate and also listen to grow at the same time. The two can coexist. Before I get into all of the DMs with what you guys have shared, I wanted to get a little bit vulnerable, and which you guys know I have no problem doing, and just kind of share my thoughts on friendship and where it's been lately for me personally. Being an adult and being in friendship with people, I think first and foremost, you realize that it requires real work. Friendship in your teenage years or even your 20s may have been easier because you had access to a lot more people around you that were in the same stage or phase of life, or your friends by association or proximity, etc., all those things. It's not just showing up at a brunch, showing up at an event or whatever, sending a text once a month. Adult friendship requires reciprocity, vulnerability, willingness to be seen, willingness to show up. And I think this is where a lot of us are feeling that our friendships are lacking. I know I am. I know I struggle with this in my friendships, and I have evaluated a lot of my friendships lately based on where I feel there is reciprocity and vulnerability and willingness there to have hard conversations and show up when maybe my life is really full, but that person needs me, you know? I think another thing is that I've realized is being real with yourself when you've quietly outgrown a friendship, or maybe not so quietly, letting go of friendships, or even being let go by other people in friendships. I have been lied to. I've been burnt in business. I've put in 100% effort and realized I'm being met with 0% on the other side. I've realized that I care way more about a friend than they do about me simply by the actions of, them. I've had friends talk behind my back, and these are all things that are happening as an adult in my friendships. We think or associate with these types of things, when you're in middle school and high school and there's drama and this and that, but really it exists all the way through. And it's like, why didn't we grow out of this? And honestly, some people really never did. I recently had someone say to me, a good friend of mine, or who I consider to be a good friend of mine, say, wow, I had no idea you were going through that. And this was when I decided to just be very forward about something that I was going through. And it struck me when they said that, because I realized the reason why they had no idea was because they never even asked. They never reach out. They never are the person that is initiating interaction. It's always on my end. And at that point, it had been months since I had any interaction with this friend, simply because I was kind of like waiting to see if they would. And I know that someone listening feels that deeply right now too. Like maybe you've pulled back to see, are they going to text me? Or is it always just me? Another thing, navigating friendship right now in your 30s, or could be in your 20s, 40s, whatever it is, what I used to believe friendship would look like at this point in my life versus the reality of it. Navigating friendship specifically in your 30s is so interesting because everyone is at a very different phase in life. I am single, aka not married. Obviously I'm in a relationship, but I'm single with no kids. I'm not married. And that is very different than a lot of people that are in my life. A lot of my friends are married and have been for a really long time, and they have kids, multiple kids. Some of my friends have 3, 4 kids. And so they're in a totally different phase of life than I am. I also have some really good friends that are in their 20s, and they're navigating the changes and the life stages and the growing up and the identity shifts that happen a lot in your 20s. And there's nothing wrong with either or of those phases and stages. They're just very different. Even being in your 30s, you have people that are, like I said, married with kids, but then you have other people and friends that are navigating a divorce or navigating a really long relationship ending or going back to school for another degree or up and moving across the country. There's so many things that are happening. And when I sit down at a table with any number of friends at this point in my life, we're all really at a very different stage. And that's interesting because sometimes you think like, oh, I'm going to have friends that are all going through the same thing, and you're just not. Another thing that I have realized is as I have grown and changed and really done a lot of inner work and healing on myself and inner child discovery and all these things, you naturally drift apart from other people. And a lot of times they're the people that are not on that same trajectory of growth or healing, because you can no longer relate, or you can no longer sit in the commiseration or the victim mentality, or that whole thought line could go in a lot of directions. But when you're doing the deep inner work and you're in a relationship with someone who isn't, there's just this natural progression of moving apart because you no longer are even on the same frequency as them. And I've definitely experienced that as well. So I say all of that and share all of these scenarios for you to know that I'm in the same spot that all of you are in. I don't have friendship figured out. I am not the pro or anything over here. I'm not claiming to be. I'm navigating friendship as an adult right alongside all of you. And today we are opening up this conversation so that we can talk about it together, to be better women, to be better friends, to shed light on areas, and maybe even to see ourselves in a different way and challenge us to show up better in friendships. Because at the end of the day, we all want a good friend, right? And to have a good friend, you have to be a good friend. Let's kick off with reading some of the DMs that I got. And I copied and pasted these onto my notes right here in front of me so that I could read them word for word. I'm not sharing anyone's name, so don't worry. I'm not going to call you out or anything like that, but I wanted to read these word for word because I wanted this to feel really raw and real, and you could hear what other women are saying and know that what you shared with me wasn't just you. A lot of the things had a common theme too. A lot of people said time. Time is a big one for them. One-sided effort, like no one reciprocates. Very surface level conversations or lack of vulnerability. Different life stages, kind of what I shared before. Feeling unseen and unheard in friendships. And feeling lonely even when you have friends. All of these being a common theme tell me one thing, that we aren't really lacking friendships. We are lacking things in our friendships. Like, we all have friends, or quote unquote friends, if that's what we want to call it. But these friendships are not fulfilling us because they are lacking what we need as human beings. Connection, depth, reciprocity, presence. All of these things need to exist in friendship for us to feel fulfilled by a friendship. Think about a relationship when you're in a romantic relationship with someone. If there isn't connection and depth and communication and reciprocity and presence and attention and time and devotion and effort and all these things, you're not fulfilled in that relationship, and friendships are the same way. Adult friendships aren't really hard because we are necessarily doing something wrong. They're hard because our lives have gotten so full. We are all carrying more things. And somewhere along the way, that depth, that connection, that time, all these things got replaced with convenience. And now we are subbing in the effort of friendship for convenience. So I'm going to read through some of these DMs because I feel like they offer so much insight and depth into what we as women are going through. And again, we realize that we are not alone. So here we go. Being in different chapters of our lives and feeling isolated purely by being 36 and in a relationship but unmarried and without children. Whoever sent this message, we are the same. I'm 36 in a relationship, but I'm not married and I don't have kids. So I'm in definite different chapters of my life. So I get that. Anyway, I don't want to mention something about each thing just yet. I'm just going to read through these and then kind of recap them after. So another person, especially not having kids, it seems harder to connect and meet new people. I'm 47 years old and I'm a grandmother. I would really love to connect with ladies in my same stage of life. And I tell people right now that I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I get tired of being the one to initiate and reach out all the time to certain people. Anytime we hang out, I'm also asking and having to be the initiator. I'm already handling 1,000,001 things. Can my friends just please do some planning too and I just show up? Another one, I'm not getting texts back or friends that are flaky with committing to plans. It's hard not to take things personally, but I try to give grace knowing that we're all in different stages of life. People have plenty of time to just scroll on social media and post on social media, but they don't bother to check in on their friends. People are acting like everything's great and there's no vulnerability. Another one, feeling vulnerable enough to share things and feel like the other person cares and is really listening. I feel like most of my friendships are surface level. Another one, when one gives more than another and one just doesn't feel appreciated. Another, I've lost and moved on from a lot of people lately who I considered to be very good friends, but they've actually been really toxic, two-faced, or had different priorities the entire time. I'm not into gossip, and I think I just want better friends who want to look at their goals over who is doing what or comparing. Those are just a handful of the many, many messages that I got. Again, some people sent back these sentences and some people just said one word, time or availability or whatever. All in all, what I realized in reading these through multiple times was they aren't really separate problems. It's not like one person's it's an individual problem over another. It's really the same thing disguised as a bunch of different things. And so when I was thinking about this, and I'm like, how can we dive into this and not just sit in the discomfort of the friendships that we have right now? I'm like, why do they feel different? Like, why do friendships feel so different? And I think there's a lot of factors. One, the different life stages. As many of you said, you're married or you're single and your friend is the opposite. You have kids, you don't have kids. People that are in a different career season than others. Maybe it's a more intense career or intense time in your career versus another. I think these are just really practical, obvious factors. And I really want to touch on the different life stages thing. So, like I said, many of my friends are married with kids and with multiple kids. Some of my best and closest friends have 2, 3, 4 kids. And if they're listening, they know who they are. I want to shout them out really quick because our friendship has not been defined by whether they have children or not. And I'm really grateful for that because they still invest in me as an individual, as a single, unmarried girl, having a life that looks different than theirs. And I invest in them and their story or walk as a mom or a wife, or I show up for their kids. I have fun with their kids, in different contexts. Like maybe I'm going over their house and just playing with the kids or whatever. We've invested in one another and been able to maintain our friendship. And I think that's because we have one true friendship where we know each other at our cores and who we are as individuals, and we haven't allowed the roles outside of us to define who we are or how we show up in our friendship. I will say that's not necessarily the case for every single friend, as you guys know and are experiencing and feeling. And also, I can also think of several different friends that I have now or used to have where that's not the case. But there's 3 people that I can think of off the top of my head in my life that I would consider some of my dearest, closest friends. And their stage of life and my stage of life hasn't defined our friendship. And that's a beautiful thing. So I am here to tell you that it is possible to be friends with people, even though you're at a different stage in life than they are. To that point, and I want to acknowledge that once you are in like your mid-20s, late 20s, 30s, 40s, etc., we're not all living the same life at the same time anymore. So that is a huge factor in our friendships and how our friendships are defined. In your 20s and even your teens, proximity created friendship. Association created friendship. Where you went to school, like you became friends with the people in college because they were the people around you, but you may not pick those same friends later on in your 30s. Had you met them in your 30s, you were friends with them because of that in your 20s. In your 30s, especially, and I say 30s loosely because I know this transfers over into people in their 20s or people in their 40s. So hear me out when I say that. Be open-minded, I guess, when I say that. But alignment with people is what sustains friendship. And that is what I can say at the core. Even if you are in a different stage of life as another person, the alignment that you two have as individuals is what will sustain your friendship. Okay, another thing is time is no longer casual. I remember being in my early 20s and it's like you don't really have a lot of commitments. You don't really have a lot that's consuming your time. So everything is a lot more casual. Oh yeah, I'm available for that. Oh yeah, we're all doing this. Now everyone's schedule feels so packed between work and life and family. And if you have kids, it's like your weekends are filled with baseball fields and whatever. Or, there's so many things that fill our schedules and time. Friendships really require now in our lives a lot of intentionality, planning. I literally have been trying to hang out with 2 of my girlfriends for 6 weeks and we keep having to reschedule or change the day, or something comes up for somebody's personal work, whatever, and we've had to reschedule, and it's like, oh my God, are we ever going to find a time? Friendships really require intention. And what I also want to insert here is that sometimes friendships require sacrifice. They require showing up even though maybe we've had a really hard day or a really hard week and we don't want to do or show up for the dinner or the friend or whatever. Obviously, there's a time and a place when we have to say no. I'm not saying don't say no. Like, listen and, have the boundaries or whatever when you need to. But also, we have to show up for people if we want them to show up for us. We have to choose. Friendship has to be chosen. It has to be prioritized. It has to be intentional. And if we're constantly canceling or changing plans or not showing up, then we can't expect the same from the other side. Another thing is right now, our emotional capacities are so much lower. I feel like everyone's overstimulated and stressed the F out all the time. The mental load, the exhaustion, the nervous system, especially when you're in your late 30s and maybe you're struggling with life and hormonal changes. I know I've been starting to have these conversations about perimenopause with my friends. I didn't even know that was a word like 6 months ago. And now it's coming up in text messages where we're all like, are we going crazy? There's just different things that come up at different parts of life. Our emotional capacity changes. And it's not that sometimes people don't care and don't want to show up. Sometimes they're maxed out. Sometimes they have hit their limit for the week, and that's why they're like, hey, I really can't make it. And I want to challenge you that if your friend says, hey, you know what, I can't make it to dinner tonight, instead of just thinking like, oh, she's canceling again, why don't we extend the olive branch and check in, use that as an opportunity to check in with our friends. Hey, no problem. I know maybe you had a tough week. Is everything okay? Is something going on? Is there any way that I can support you best? How about I bring dinner to your house instead of we go out? There's so many different ways that can go instead of receiving the text of, hey, the plans are canceled, and immediately becoming mad or upset or, oh, she's canceling again. These are the little micro moments that may define your friendship and how you show up in it. I am reminded right now of a situation that actually happened in one of my friendships a few months ago. I have this really good friend of mine, and I know she's listening. I have a really, really good friend of mine who's become one of my closest friends in the last year or so. But I noticed there was something different in the way that she was showing up in our friendship back in the fall. Kind of like a slow progression, but I started to notice little things. Canceling, not responding to a text, whatever. It was just this weird energy, and I was like, what is going on, And I didn't want to take it personally, but then at one point I was like, I'm starting to take this personally. And so we ended up, the stars basically aligned for us to end up driving somewhere together in the car for like a 20-minute drive. And I took this as my opportunity to confront her about it. And I don't want to say confront in a way that was harsh, but more so offering an invitation for her to be vulnerable and share what might be going on, because I knew there was something going on. And so I just said, hey, is everything okay with you? And her first response was, oh yeah, everything's great. Kind of just the whole brush it off, whatever. And I was like, I know it's not. So I just said, hey, okay. I was like, I really don't feel like it is. Are you sure? Kind of like pushing gently, but also still being very caring. And she was like, yeah, why? Like, whatever. And I was like, well, I said their name. And I was like, because I was like, I'm noticing a pattern. Every time we make plans, you're canceling on me last minute. And by last minute, I mean like an hour before or the night before the morning plans or whatever it was. And there's just this feeling that I have that I'm like, did I do something? Are you okay? Is there something going on? And about 5 seconds later, she broke down in tears. Long story short, this friend of mine basically was like, Marissa, I've never had someone care about me in a friendship the way that you just did. And this ensued a over hour-long conversation with us where we got really deep about the things that we were both navigating and going through. And this opened up a level of vulnerability for her and offered a safe place. And that's where I really want to land here. Friendship is a safe place. It offered her a safe place to share what she was really going through. And she realized that I wasn't just a fair weather friend. I wasn't there for just the good times. I wasn't there just for the fun pictures or the cute moments or the fun dinner that you dress up and go out with your friends for. I was there for those things, but I was also there for walking through the things that she was going through with her. And as a friend, I wasn't going anywhere, even though I may have felt rejected, like the friendship wasn't being reciprocated. And I told her, I said, hey, I value your friendship. I value the friendship that we are building. And I knew that if I didn't say something and approach you and tell you that I felt like something was off, that I was going to internalize that and start to pull back and be like, well, she doesn't care about me. She doesn't want to talk to me. She doesn't want to hang out with me, whatever. When in reality, that was not the case at all. She was feeling nervous to show up in the friendship because she didn't want to burden me with her problems. And by me reaching out and asking and not just taking the quick, yeah, I'm fine, everything's good, I pushed a little bit more, again, gently, and offered her a safe place to open up. And now this exact friendship is one of the most fulfilling friendships I have. There is complete openness and honesty there. The level of vulnerability that we reached together just from that one interaction created a stability in the friendship where we have a really strong foundation and know that we can turn to one another no matter what we're going through. A lot of you have said you've outgrown that surface level connection and that surface level feeling and the lack of vulnerability and all of that. And my, I guess, advice or thought on that is that we all have. Nobody wants that. No one wants a surface level friendship. I don't know one person that's like, yeah, I'll take a surface level friendship. But the question here is, are we creating a safe space and safe place for our friends to land when they are vulnerable? That's where the connection happens. That's where the depth happens. That's where the vulnerability is created, in those moments of connection. And so on that note, I wanted to think through a few things for us to kind of reflect on our friendships right now. And given that little story, I guess, that I just shared with you guys in the context, think about where in your friendships right now do you feel the most seen? And even maybe take it a step further and say, what friends do you feel the most seen with? Or maybe what friend? Maybe there's one and one is better than none. But where in your friendships do you feel the most seen? Where do you feel like you're overgiving of your time, of your effort, and it's just not being reciprocated? And if you are the friend that's maybe sitting in the place of not reciprocating with someone else, ask yourself why. Why are you not reciprocating with this person? Is it because they drain your energy, or is it because of your own unwillingness to be vulnerable in friendship? And you want to protect yourself and stay on the surface level side. But in turn, it's costing you the depth that you want in friendship. What kind of friendships do you actually want right now? I think when we get real with ourselves, with these different reflective questions, the answers might surprise us. Think about them for a little while. Maybe rewind this or write them down and ponder them. I'm a big journaler, you guys know, but write those few things down in your journal, your notes, wherever, your planner, like if you're a planner girl, whatever. Write them down and think about them in the next couple of days. Where in your friendships do you feel the most seen? Where do you feel like you're overgiving? What kind of friendships do you actually want right now? And I think when we answer these questions for ourselves, they will help be the driver in our friendships and how we are showing up, and even which ones to prioritize or which ones to let go of. Even there's so many things to unpack on this friendship thing. I'm like very much feeling an episode 2 brewing. I'm like, even as I'm sharing and talking and all this, I have so many more things coming up in my mind where I'm like, oh, I could go that direction. I could go that direction. And as a side note, when I am putting my podcast episodes together, I write down my thoughts, then I organize my thoughts, then I break it into like, okay, this is what I'm going to open with. This is like the middle part, and this is my closing and like how to wrap it up. But I also leave room to flow in the moment, because sometimes when I'm sitting here behind this mic, I get into this flow where it's like, oh, it just takes me on this whole other journey or whatever, and I end up not even looking at the notes that I wrote down or there were things that I had planned or thought I would say. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I should say that, whatever. Anyway, I feel like an episode 2 is definitely brewing to build on this, because I feel like there's so much here to unpack. There's so much more on the friendship things. And this episode is not over yet, but I'm just sharing my thoughts in real time with you guys on this episode. So that being said, while I'm thinking about another episode, as I'm already recording this one episode, I wanted to take something a little bit deeper with the friendship and talk about some truths in friendships that I feel like maybe we need to hear. And these are things that I've realized within friendships, because I thought when I was in high school, the people that I was friends with, I was going to be friends with for the rest of my life. And some of them I am absolutely still friends with, and we can get together and pick up right where we left off. Nothing has skipped a beat and things. But there's other people that I have known since kindergarten, first grade, that I was friends with through high school. And one of my dearest friends that I thought was my dearest friend, I remember I think it was our senior year, maybe even our junior year, but she was my best friend. Like if someone asked me my best friend growing up, it was always this girl. And I remember saying something about like college or like the next phase of life or whatever. And she was like, well, we're not going to be friends anymore then. And I was like, what? It was like she already had this predetermined decision that we weren't going to be friends after high school. And I remember being so taken back, because I was like, wait, I thought we were going to be friends forever. Like, you would be in my wedding, but she saw high school as like the end of our friendship, and we hadn't even reached the end of high school yet. And so I think that was one of my first realizations of how much friendship changes. You know, it was one of my first experiences, I should say. And on that note, one of the truths about friendship that I wrote down was, not all friendships are meant to last. And I think this is really hard for all of us, the pill to swallow, if you will. I can't be the only one who feels like this is hard. I think it's really hard to admit that not all friendships are meant to last. Not all people are meant to go through every phase of our life with us. If you have a friend that you have had through many phases of life who is still your friend, that is such a beautiful gift, because some people are just in our lives for a season or a reason, or to fulfill a certain cycle or lesson in our lives. Some people we were friends with based on who we were. If we've grown to a different place and we are just changed, or we've made different decisions, or even just simple things like moving sometimes, can affect our friendships. And letting go of a friendship, or having a friend drift apart, or a friendship maybe even coming to a very abrupt end, doesn't mean that the friendship wasn't real when it lasted or that it wasn't fulfilling when it lasted. It just means that it's no longer aligned or it's no longer fulfilling something in our life or its cycle has simply completed. It doesn't mean that the ending part isn't hard, but it is the reality that not all friendships are meant to last. The second thing is one-sided effort or someone not being reciprocal absolutely will burn you out. If you are being the constant initiator, whether that's the one who's always sending the text first or the voice note first, or you're always the one to say, hey, I miss you, let's make plans, or asking how the person is, whatever. When you feel in a friendship that someone is unreciprocating the effort that you are putting forth, you absolutely will feel drained and burnt out and honestly probably even start to resent the person. You should not have to beg for your presence in a friendship from someone. This is something that has been a huge pillar for me in the last couple of years. I simply decided that if someone was not going to be reciprocal with me, that I was going to stop. And when I say reciprocal, you guys, I'm not saying, oh, I reached out twice and they didn't answer, or they took 3 days to get back to me, or I reached out twice and they didn't reach out the next time, whatever. I mean, there's a pattern that has been exhibited over months and months or a long-standing period of time where you're like, okay, I'm sitting here and know for 100% fact that this is not a reciprocal friendship. I sadly can think of one friendship that I just recently had this realization with. Shoot, that's hard to say out loud. Sorry. I recently had this realization with a friendship that I really care about this person. I thought that we had a friendship where we both cared deeply about another. And here's the thing. I don't think this person doesn't care about me as a person. I think they genuinely do. But what I realized was their name never pops up on my phone first. I'm always sending the text of, hey, how are you? Hey, it's been a few weeks. Or, hey, let's get together. I miss you. I was thinking back recently when something happened in this friendship that really stung, I should say. And really was like the icing on the cake that I realized, oh, this isn't reciprocal at all. You know, it kind of gave me something that really, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. But I was thinking back and I realized that I've always been the one to reach out first or to kind of wave the flag and be like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's hang out. I don't know if I can remember one instance where this person actually reached out to me and just said, hey, Maris, or hey, what's going on? How are you? Miss you. Let's get together. Or, like, call me and catch up or whatever. And maybe there is an instance that I'm not thinking of, but over the course of like our friendship, which has been for years now, I was thinking about it and it really hit me hard. That hits you hard. It really hurts. When you realize that you've invested so much time in a person and you're realizing that they're not prioritizing you in the same way. As a side note to that, I just want to say that there are times and seasons in people's life where they don't have the capacity and they're completely maxed out, or they're at a really low point, or they're going through something that's really hard. And it's not this time and season in their life when they're going to be the one initiating. And that's when you have to show up as a friend and not take that personally and know that they need you in that time. And I'm not talking about those times when there's a couple months or maybe even a year when somebody just went through the hardest year of their life and with loss or a relationship ending or just all the things that life throws at us. I'm not talking about those situations where you have to be the one to put your foot forward. I'm talking just about the actual ins and outs of friendship all the time. Okay, so the next truth is surface level friendships honestly are more draining than no friendships at all. And I have said this recently actually to several of my friends, and I'm like, you guys know I don't do surface level. I don't do small talk. I don't do the, hey, how are you? Oh my God, good. I just like, not that I don't say hello and how are you to people. I do, but I'm just saying like the friendships that don't want to have depth to them, to me, are not necessarily worth my time. And these are typically the ones that are they're surface level. They are gossip based or gossip oriented. This person only ever wants to complain to you or talk about another person, or like, oh my God, did you hear? Or they're convenience based. This person is friends with you because it's convenient for them. It is by association. It is because you're both in the same place at the same time, at the same, every week or whatever. Like, those are surface level friendships where sometimes they are typically pretty much way more draining than just having no friends at all. You'd rather not put the mental or emotional energy into that friendship. And then the last truth about friendship is that loneliness, you may experience loneliness even when you have friends. Maybe even when you have really good friends. And I have definitely felt this. I am sure many of you have felt this. But and this happens especially when you are going through life changes or life transition or life after some type of loss or life after a big upgrade or an up level in your energy, in your frequency, in how you are showing up. It can feel lonely when you are going through these things, whether they are good or bad, I should say. You can feel like you're the only one, even if you're not. And I want to emphasize that. A lot of times we may feel lonely or like we're the only one going through said thing, even though we are not. It doesn't mean the loneliness isn't valid. And that's important to remember. I think that overall the loneliness factor was a common thread in a lot of the responses that I got from you guys. The underlying thing was that we are lonely. We don't have a lot of people that we feel are showing up in our lives, and that makes us feel lonely, even if there's people around us. And that's where I said this earlier in this episode, quality over quantity becomes essential. You can have a ton of friends, but still feel lonely. And it's not about how many you have. It's about the quality of the ones that you do have to support you so that you are not feeling that loneliness to begin with. Because like I said before, I don't think that those of you who shared your sentiments or even are listening right now don't have friends. We're just lonely in our friendships because the quality isn't there. Another thing that I just remembered, and I'm just scrolling back on my notes here for the DMs, that I think that someone brought this up and I wanted to mention it, is that people have plenty of time to scroll or be on social media or post on social media, but don't bother to check in on their friends. And whoa, you guys, this is a whole can of worms. There could probably be a whole episode about this one, but I am definitely in agreement with that. As someone who is on their phone for their job, I can 100% relate to this, that sometimes I just have phone fatigue and my friends might text me and I'm just like, I have no capacity left to be on my phone today because I've been on it editing or filming or whatever for hours. And it's like the last thing that I want to do is sit on my phone and either answer texts or have conversations back and forth. But I do it, or I set aside a time in my day or in my week where I know I'm going to answer a bunch of messages. I also know that there's certain people that when they text me, I'm reading their message or I'm replying to it or whatever. I have this like unspoken ranking system, I guess you could say, in my head, where I know if my sisters message me or something, I'm responding within a certain amount of time, you know? And that's just kind of like, I think, how it is, because we have to prioritize our relationships and friendships, right? But the social media thing is interesting. I actually had one of my friends who is here in Naples. She is a growing, aspiring creator, influencer right now. And she called me and she was like, hey, I have a question for you and want to know if you've ever experienced this in your friendships. She's like, I'm sure you have because you've been in like the online space for so long. But she shared something on her Instagram, and another one of her friends felt really hurt that she had to see this certain thing on her Instagram instead of hear it from her directly. And that was a really interesting conversation because I was like, you know, your friend's feelings are valid. Like if this girl is one of your best friends and she's seeing something on Instagram before hearing it from you, that can feel really hurtful. It can feel like you're prioritizing what the rest of the world thinks before the people close to you know something, whether it's good, bad, sad, ugly, hard, amazing, congratulatory, whatever, like in your life. And we had this conversation, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. And I encouraged her to have a conversation with her friend and be open-minded, but at the same time, like, it's interesting how social media has affected our friendships. Let me say that. And brought another element to our friendships. Oh, this person's viewing my stories, but they haven't answered my text back that I sent 3 days ago. Or they're liking my post and they're not replying or whatever, you know, and I know we've all felt that and I know we've all been there. I mean, I even experienced this recently with a friend where they had something really exciting happen in their life and I would consider them in my very close circle of friends, and I found out about it online. And it really hit me hard. I couldn't believe or wrap my head around the fact that they would post about this before sharing it, like a very intimate thing in their life with their close friends. And then it made me sit there and be like, well, do they consider me a close friend? Are they purposely excluding me from this amazing thing that's happening? Are they just not thinking? Do they just not think the same as me or prioritize things the same as me? Because it's like I would never have posted something of that nature without sharing it with the people close to me first. And then I'm like, okay, so is there not reciprocity there? Yeah, you guys, there's a lot of questions here. And it's like, is there a right and wrong answer to that? I don't think so. I don't know. I think this is something that's new that we're all navigating together in this very digital forward world. And there's also like this whole element of parasocial relationships and everything now that people feel safe talking to people, you know, online. It's a whole thing. That could also be another whole episode. But that's very, I want to validate that thing that person said, because I know that all of us probably feel that. I will also say, like, as a creator, I am sharing so much online, and I have so many people that I know in real life that are friends of mine that I've known for years, that are good friends of mine, whatever. They don't ever like my posts. They don't ever comment on my posts, nothing. And I'm like, that is literally free ways to support me as your friend. It's like weird. You're viewing everything. I can see that you're viewing it, but you're never interacting with any of it. And it's like, why? You know? And I wonder that as a creator. I'm like, I know they're seeing it, so why aren't they interacting with it? Because that's literally a free way to support me. You don't have to buy something. You don't have to use a code, like whatever. That again, it just like brings up a whole nother level of, or a whole nother aspect, I guess, of things that yes, there's life stages. Yes, there's ages. Yes, there's all these different things, but also social media. That's a huge factor in our friendships and how things are defined now. Or, oh, we see so-and-so is hanging out with this person that I thought I was good friends with. Why didn't they invite me? And the reality is it's okay. We don't have to be invited to every single thing. We don't invite every other person to every single thing, but it still stings. So social media has brought this whole other dimension into our friendships. I could deep dive on that one. Let me know if you guys would like to hear more about the social media thing, especially as someone who is in the social media space. There's definitely so many layers there within friendships that I've experienced, or things that have happened to me, or that I've even navigated with friendships, even parasocial things with followers. I could totally deep dive on that. If you guys are interested in a social media deep dive on friendship, let me know. I would be happy to share more. So anyway, in closing, I want to wrap this episode up. I definitely am feeling a part 2, maybe even a part 3 with that social media thing. So like I said, I want to hear from you guys on this. Send me a message, send me a DM, email me, snail mail me, like whatever. I want to leave you guys with a few things. Quality over quantity becomes essential. We kind of harped on that a little bit. And then here's another thing with that. Friendships can be less frequent, and they will be in your adulthood, but it doesn't mean they're not as meaningful. We can still have meaningful friendships even if the interactions are way fewer than it was in our teens, early 20s, etc. The effort should feel mutual. Like I said before, the reciprocity thing, that's really hard. Overall, we need to remember it's not always going to be 50-50. There are checks and balances. There are times when it ebbs and flows. The point is that it ebbs and flows. It should feel balanced over time. It should feel mutual over time. It's not always going to be perfect 50-50, but it should feel balanced. And then the last thing is that when you are thinking or experiencing loneliness in your friendships, realize that it's okay to want more. It's okay to want more depth, more presence, more connection, more intentionality. Wanting better friendships doesn't make you a needy person. Just like wanting more in your relationship or more from a job or any situation. Wanting better, wanting more doesn't make you needy. It means that you are aware, and I think it's a direct indication of our own growth. So I'm going to recap that and say that again. Wanting better friendships doesn't make you needy. It means that you are aware. And I think when you start going on your own path of self-discovery and growth and transformation, all the pillar things that this podcast stands for and is about, you naturally will grow apart and away from friendship, and you will want more out of it because what fills your cup will be different. And so in closing, I want to leave you ladies with this. If friendships feel hard right now, it doesn't mean that you are doing life wrong. It might mean that you are in a transition. It might mean that you are growing. And it might mean that you are ready for something deeper. The right friendships will not feel like something you have to constantly hold together. They'll feel like something that you can rest inside of. And so as you navigate your week and your month and the upcoming times with your friends, keep those things in mind. Remember them. And if this episode resonated with you navigating your own friendships in some way, or even challenged you in some way to be a better friend, I'd love to hear from you, as I've said multiple times. Your feedback will be so helpful in crafting this next part 2, as it did for part 1. And so on that note, I will see you next week. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Behind the Cusp. If you love this episode, I'd so appreciate it if you'd rate, review, or share it with someone else who's also on their path of self-growth. These all go such a long way in supporting the show. Be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find me over on Instagram at StyleCusp and follow the show Behind the Cusp. And as always, keep tuning inward. True transformation begins from the inside out.